Beowulf is one of the most important works of Old English literature. It has influenced many contemporary fantasy works, such as the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it has truly stood the test of time and delighted readers the world over. Beowulf was originally created by an anonymous poet. Scholars are at odds regarding when the poem was composed. Beowulf is believed to have been composed between 700 and 750 CE. Most of what is known about the author is derived from studying the time period in which Beowulf was written, and the methods and the poetic form of the piece. The poet was gifted in alliteration, which sets up a rhythm that begs for the poem to be performed and chanted, suggesting the story's origins stem from the oral tradition. Beowulf is the oldest existing Old English poem. The story takes place in Scandinavia, arguably between the end of the 5th and beginning of the 8th century. The mix of pagan and Christian traditions and values contribute to the difficulty of narrowing onto a single time frame. Now in 2013, archaeologists claim to have found the ruins of Heorot, located in Denmark about 20 miles west of Copenhagen and dating to the 6th century. The poem was most likely written down by 2 monks in England. Handwriting analysis of the single medieval manuscript dated it to the early 11th century. The manuscript now resides in the British Museum and is one of, if not the most translated texts in human history. Original audiences likely sat by a fire and listened to an orator give the epic story the telling it deserved. The plot of Beowulf begins with the king of the Danes, Hrothgar, whose lands have been terrorized by an evil force named Grendel. A young Geat warrior, Beowulf, comes to his aid in repayment to Hrothgar for saving his father years ago. Beowulf calls on the beast, and without armor or weaponry, rips off Grendel's arm. The beast returns to its home and dies. Seeking revenge, Grendel's mother arrives the next day and kills one of Hrothgar's elders, taking Grendel's arm. Beowulf seeks her out and attempts to fight her. His sword, however, is ineffective against her. He grabs a magical sword hanging on her wall and slices off her head. Beowulf finds Grendel's corpse and takes his head as a trophy. The blade of the sword melts away, and he brings Grendel's head and the hilt of the sword to Hrothgar. Hrothgar showers him in gifts, and he returns to the Geats. After the fall of 2 Geat kings, Beowulf receives the crown. For 50 years, he maintains relative peace with the other kingdoms until a dragon torments his land after a runaway slave steals from it. Beowulf goes to battle with the dragon, and all but one of his men flee. Beowulf and Wiglaf defeat the dragon, but not before Beowulf is poisoned by one of its fangs. He sees the spoils of battle one last time and gives his armor to faithful companion Wiglaf. The story ends much like it starts, with the death of a hero and an elaborate funeral. All throughout Beowulf, symbols mark critical notions of importance. Grendel himself symbolizes evil and jealousy, a descendant of Cain and therefore banished. The dragon symbolizes greed. He hoards gold and treasures, seeking out a single golden goblet. Heorot Hall is a symbol of happiness and pride, as well as distress. Some of the themes throughout Beowulf include the heroic code, the basis of Beowulf's action, and it consists of loyalty, pride, and glory. The theme of good versus evil is the contrast between Beowulf and Grendel, loyalty versus pride. Loyalty itself is a theme, the guiding force when the epic was written. Then there's the theme of death and defeat. The inevitable truth is that no one can escape death. And then hospitality. Visiting nobility and warriors expected hospitable feasts. Again, while not much is known about the individual who created Beowulf, it has had an indisputable and lasting influence upon literature for countless generations.